Yeah, I'm sixth generation farmer here on our farm. I farm with my wife Naomi and my mum and dad Ken and Wendy, and we've got two boys that work for us as well. We put 4,000 hectares a year in of crop, mainly dry land. We've got a bit of irrigation as well, and yeah, we try and grow a number of crops, cereal, oilseed and legumes. Yeah, just to sort of maximise diversity and with our rotations and things like that. Yeah, well, I've sort of been a member of Vic No-Till for a few years now, and I'm also a member of a few other groups, but I've been on the committee with Vic No-Till for a year now, and yeah, I really like that. The Vic No-Till, I suppose, motto or philosophy is farmers helping farmers. So that networking, it just gives you access to other like-minded farmers and people with practical experience in a range of different options, whether it be, you know, implementing controlled traffic or growing a different type of crop, you know, new to this area that's been grown in other areas. It sort of draws on a great, you know, broad range of very experienced, and there's a lot of wealth of knowledge through organisations like the Vic No-Till. Yeah, growing a crop and knowing the agronomy or the practical side of what to do there is obviously very important in our game. But the business side and the financial side is equally as, if not more important, and that's the same in any business. You got to know your numbers and be able to budget, because, you know, it's not just about growing the biggest crop, you know, yield wise. It's about the biggest gross margin, and, you know, you could grow a 6 tonne wheat crop, say, and it's cost you 5 tonne in expenses to grow it, or you could grow a 4 tonne wheat crop and it's cost you 2 tonne to grow, and you may have improved a bit of soil health, but it's that gross margin. You've made a margin on that 2 tonne rather than 1 tonne. So it's not always about knowing, you know, growing the biggest and best crop. That's good for in the pub, bit of pub talk and that, but you know, as far as your bank balance, it's yeah, it's probably better to be growing a higher gross margin. But also in that, I think there's a fine line in, you know, you've got to keep in mind to keep your soil health at a pretty high priority, because at the end of the day, if you lose that or you damage that to a point, well then in the long run you're going to go downhill. So yeah, we use some, there's many different farm software programs out there for managing your business in whatever field. We use one, and it's really good that it allows us to sort of keep a track on each individual paddock. So every paddock will be mapped and named, and with that we will use this software to sort of, you know, every input that we have in the paddock and expense, whether it's fertiliser or operational costs, chemical costs, all the day-to-day interest, lease costs, all those things go in and then tracked, and then we'll put our yields, like we can get our yield mapping, what we actually got paid per tonne. So it all comes back to a dollars per hectare thing we work on. So how much dollars per hectare we've spent, and then how much we've made, and what's sort of in the middle, or what we've made off that. But the farm software, there's lots of different ones out there, but it's really good because, you know, I can get to on our program and just hit up, you know, 5 years ago, what was growing in that paddock, what chemicals did we put on there, bang, it's all written down. You know, I can, oh, that didn't work that year, or that went really well, and we can use that to analyse, you know, what's worked and what hasn't, and pick out poorer areas, paddocks that are underperforming, paddocks that are doing really well, and then you can sort of sit down and look at that, and then maybe soil test between your good and your bad, and use that data to, I suppose, yeah, to improve your poorer areas and make sure those costs, just to keep an eye on your cost per hectare, that's not getting blown out. Yeah, so I suppose the message to other young farmers would be, you know, to know that the business side, it's very important. Know your costs of production. That's probably one of the biggest things in agriculture is costs of production, keeping them in check, and then knowing what your costs, or you know, what you're going to get for your crops. So I suppose looking at, when you're budgeting, if you have a low expected yield, and, you know, a low yield, an expected yield and a high yield, and then you've got low prices with an average and a high prices. So You really need to know, because we deal with supply and demand, and that dictates prices and that. So we need to know our historical averages for prices and yields, know what that figure is, and if you can do your budgeting to make money on a below average price and yield, you're always going to be better off, because if you're budgeting on averages, prices and yield, when you have that bad year where you get a low price or a low yield, you're going to lose money. And that quite often comes with experience and help with other people that are out there. There's a lot of things I see where you could be budgeting on an average year and an average price, and whether it be an environmental factor, a frost or a heat wave, these things you can't foresee happening, or a political factor, with prices, or like just recently Murray Goulburn, the price things going on there. You can't budget for those. So if we can work in getting the job to work with a below average price and yield, you're going to win, more often than lose, sort of thing.
As a young farmer, we tend to love the technical side of the story, because we love growing crops, we love rearing pens of lambs, we love fixing up the agronomy, we love growing pastures. We love the technical side of it, but that's not the whole story, and we actually have to operate and run the whole farm. And so we've got to manage the whole farm, we've got to understand the whole farm. And when I talk about the whole farm, you can think of it in terms of the bits that are in it. There's the human bit, the people, there's the technical bit, which is the main bit, but you've got to get these other bits right too, and there's the economic bit and the financial bit and the risk bit, and then the beyond the farm bit. And you've got to manage the whole system. So being good at the technical side and really interested in the technical side is necessary, but not sufficient. You have to, and that's where management comes in. You've got to manage all of those bits, the human, the technical, the risk, the economics, the finance, and then you've got to understand beyond the farm gate. So that's what I mean when I talk about the whole farm approach. And that's why I stress with young farmers that be really good technically at what you do. That's just a given. You've got to be good at that. But that alone won't help you, or won't guarantee you'll achieve your goals, because you need to make a profit. And then why do you need to make a profit? Because you want to build wealth. And why do you want to build wealth? Because you want to have choices. So the ultimate aim is not to grow a ton of wheat, it's to build the wealth to give you the choices to do the things you want to do. And so you've got to manage all these bits of a farm and put them together to achieve your goals. And that's where financial management really becomes important. And it's often the case that we're that busy farming, doing the technical stuff, we don't pay enough attention to the financial stuff and the thinking, the management thinking, the getting the gearing right, getting the debt right, being able to work out how much debt your business can service. And then to tell how your farm's performing, we need to do a little bit of what's called economics. We need to figure out the return on capital. That's the measure of whether your farm's any good or not, whether you're getting a return on capital that's more than the interest cost, and it's better than anything else you could do. And so you need to be able to do a few sums. We're not talking elaborate record keeping or anything like that, but we're talking understanding. Like there's a saying scientists like to use, you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's half right, but what they really should be saying is you can't manage what you don't understand. And so it's not enough just to understand the agronomy side of the business or the technical side. You need to understand all of it, and you need to understand the finances and the economic performance, because ultimately we want to measure, is the farm any good or not? And economics will tell you whether it's any good or not by the return on capital. You also need to answer the question, can I pay all the bills? That's where finance comes in. You need to be able to work out expected net cash flows and then track that against the actuals. That's called financial management. It's not elaborate, it's not detailed, it's just the simple arithmetic of finance, but it's enormously powerful and they're really good skills to have. And most of you young farmers will develop these skills over time if you want to do so. But I sit around a lot of kitchen tables with farm families, and often one partner in the say the family couple that are running the farm, one will be all over the technical side of things and just wonderful technically, and then leave the financial side to the other partner who might pay the bills or do the books. That's not management, that's not farm management. Farm management is putting the whole package together and being across the lot. You can't be a master of part of the system, you've got to be a master of the whole system. So the main reason I say to young farmers is to learn a bit of the business management side of it, is because to manage the whole system you need to understand the whole system. And as I say, the difference between people who really can stand back and look at their whole system and those that are tightly focused on at the ground level, the difference in the eventual performance of their businesses is quite large. So it's really worth being able to manage and understand how the whole system works. The status quo is not an option, your farm's always changing, so therefore you need to do some sums about good changes versus bad changes. And the final thing I think I should say is that financial management part of farming is not optional. It's a necessary part of running a good farm business and understanding how business works and working out how well your business is performing.